I liked Dune Part 1, but I didn't love it. I thought Part 2 was a masterpiece though. You know, why? They're the same filmmaker, they share one of the same co-writers, they have the same fascinating characters and incredible world building and mind-blowing visuals and sound design, but for some reason, Part 1 didn't fully deliver for me. And I think I may have figured out the reason. Now, I am a professional screenwriter, but I'm a newer one, and you know, just because I do this for a living does not mean that I'm claiming to be on their level or that I know better than they do. Not at all. First of all, I loved Dune Part 2. Denis Villeneuve directed Arrival, which is definitely in my top 50 movies, if not my top 25. Jon Spaihts also wrote Passengers and Prometheus and Doctor Strange. You know, I aspire to be as good as they are someday. But part of that aspiration means being curious and exploring questions just like this one, and seeing if I can learn a thing or two. I found myself thinking through this immediately after I finished watching Dune 1 in theaters. I was sitting in the lounge chairs in the best theater that we have nearby, feasting on popcorn, and my mind had been exploded by these unbelievable visuals and unbelievable sound design, and I definitely felt like I got my money's worth, but I still felt like something was missing. Because it was so epic, I found myself comparing it to other epic movies I love, like Lord of the Rings. To me, that original trilogy is the gold standard of epic filmmaking. Not that one, this one. And as a quick aside, I actually think Dune 2 is right up there. But this is about Dune 1, not Dune 2, and so I asked myself, what did Fellowship of the Ring have that Dune 1 didn't? They both had the world building, and they were both epic in scale, and they both had just these awesome characters, and they both pushed filmmaking capabilities of the time to their absolute limits. And in both movies, the stakes were extremely high. But what I realized about Dune Part 1 was that it had very little warmth. There were, like, traces of it.
You'll still be the only thing I ever needed you to be. My son.
But those moments were really limited, and they were few. Fellowship of the Ring, on the other hand, had the Shire. And although that movie doesn't stay that way, that first act is so goddamn cozy that when it's like a cold, rainy day outside, it is a regular go-to for my family. That coziness, that warmth, that heart, it provides a much needed balance for the movie, and it does something else. It gives us incredible empathy for Frodo and Sam because we understand what they have to lose. It also gives us hope for what they have to win if they succeed, and for me at least, it makes it a much more engaging movie, it gives it much more emotional weight, and in fact it's so effective that it kind of like really carries through the entire trilogy. As I thought about it, I realized that many of my favorite epic movies share that same element. So you've got the boys who are throwing rocks and tumbling around early on in Braveheart. Gladiator opens up with this warm shot of Maximus's hand as it's like going through his wheat field at home, which is a great contrast to the huge cold battle that follows it. And then in the scene that follows that, where Maximus is meeting with Caesar, we see the mutual admiration and the bond that these two men share. And Maximus talks about his home that he loves.
Through the gate is a giant poplar. Figs, apples, pears, the soil, Marcus, black. Black like my wife's hair. Grapes on the south, slopes, olives on the north. Wild ponies playing in my house. They tease my son, he wants to be one of them.
When was the last time you were home?
2 years, 264 days, and this morning.
I envy you, Maximus. It was a good home. Worth fighting for.
His home that is worth fighting for. These moments of deliberate warmth pop up over and over again in pretty much all of my favorite epic movies. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized it wasn't just in epic movies that I saw these moments. I saw them in pretty much every movie that I love. Even Seven, which is about as dark as commercial movies come, has that really warm dinner scene at Mill's home.
Why aren't you married, William?
Oh, Trace, damn.
I was close once. Just didn't happen.
It surprises me. It really does.
This is basically the moment where Somerset decides to go all in on helping Mills with his case, even though he really wants to retire. It is the moment that pulls us into Act 2. And although I definitely think you could get those characters to that same place with some other scene in some other way, I don't think the movie would be as effective without that strong dose of joy and humanity. Now, do I think this is a universal rule? No, I don't. And I'm sure that you can come up with some great counterexamples, and I encourage you to share them below in the comments. But I do think it's useful enough that for whatever reason my brain kind of came up with a screenwriting term for it, so I now refer to the need for these moments as show me the Shire. It's pretty simple. simple. Basically, in the first act, you give us a glimpse of what brings your protagonist joy. Often, that seems to be rooted in the protagonist's home, whether that's defined by like an actual place or just the people who inhabit it. And in a few cases like The Matrix, where the protagonist doesn't even really get to their true home until Act 2, you just show us those moments of joy early on in Act 2. By doing that, you have now reinforced our empathy for your protagonists. You've made it crystal clear what they stand to lose, and you've given us hope for what happens if they win. And by the way, I think Dune 2 actually had quite a bit of that, and it's part of why I liked the movie better. Anyway, for me at least, it was a cool revelation, so I thought I would share it here. And if you also thought it was cool, go ahead and like the video because it's free. And if you want to learn more about my thoughts on the stakes of your movie, you can find a video on that somewhere around here. And, let me know what you think about this whole Show Me the Shire idea. I would love to hear your thoughts. And if you are a huge fan of Dune 1, which I know there are lots of you out there, I'd love to hear your thoughts as well. Thanks so much, everybody. See you soon.